Welcome, everyone. My name is Alex Counts. For those of you that may not know me, I am the Executive Director of the India Philanthropy Alliance and also the Director of the India Giving Day campaign. And welcome to the latest installment of our Town Hall series, this one on the subject of how AI, artificial intelligence, can transform your nonprofit, featuring Shawn Olds, who's a thought leader in this space and also an old friend. I'll be introducing him in a moment. IPA is a 6-year-old network of some of the leading, most respected, largest Indian charities that are active in the US and in India. Collectively, we raise about $100 million in the United States and another $150 million plus in India. So we work at a significant scale across several different sectors: education, healthcare, livelihoods, and more. There's a larger community, and when I say that, I mean the 100 million is just the 21 organizations represented on our board of directors. There's a larger community of organizations that are part of IPA in different ways. So we also have another program that I'll just mention briefly, which is a youth essay competition. And in fact, the due date for that is coming up July 1 next week, but there's still time for people to contribute to that. In fact, I will be putting in the chat here our website where you can go and find out about the youth essay competition. Now, we have a webinar series that's open to the public, and we take on topics of interest to the larger kind of ecosystem of our volunteers, donors, supporters, board members, staff in the US and India. And we had one recently on AI, and it was titled AI for Social Good in India. And it was fairly high level. We had some people, our own Sunil Wadhwani, we had leaders from Microsoft and the Gates Foundation. These town hall series are a little different, and it's invitation only for our board, staff, and key volunteers who are really involved in implementing the work that we do, a little bit more hands-on. And as a result, we kind of get a little more technical in what we talk about. And we always welcome ideas from you all about what you would like to have covered in a town hall. We're looking at one in the fall where we talk about what are some of the operational and legal issues and opportunities of taking innovations from India to other countries in the world. How it's going to work today is I'm going to end my opening in about a minute or two. I'm going to turn it over to Shawn Olds, who I'll introduce, to share some insights. And you do not need to have any familiarity or comfort with AI to be able to benefit from what he's going to tell you. And if you do have some experience, and probably you'll benefit even more. So he'll talk for about half an hour. Then my colleague Meenakshi Mahajan, who's with me here in New York today, she will ask Shawn the first question, and time allowing, we'll invite you all to ask him questions or share your own experiences with AI and the nonprofit enterprise. And then we're going to ask Nirav Shah at the very end. Meenakshi will invite him from one of the leaders of Planet Read, a relatively new organization represented on the IPA board, to offer some concluding comments to kind of bring all this down and back to the reality of the organizations that we all are leaders in. So that's where we're going. And without further ado, I'll give a kind of official and then a personal introduction of Shawn and turn it over to him. I should also enable you, Shawn, maybe Meenakshi, if you can enable him as to share his screen. So Shawn is a technology and communications thought leader, is co-founder of boodleAI, and currently serves as its president and chief operating officer. He's had a lot of success in both the private and government sectors, and has dedicated his time to supporting nonprofits and their missions for a long time. He's been on the boards of nonprofits, and particularly in youth education and veteran services, for 30 years. And he has a bachelor's in computer science from the U.S. Military Academy, MBA from the Kellogg School, and a law degree from Northwestern School of Law. Now, I met Shawn many moons ago through really a social connection through mutual friends, and he told me he was going off to be deployed overseas in the military. I thought I'd probably never see him again. just because our lives would go in different directions. And yet, from various locations throughout the world, he would send me checks when I was running the Grameen Foundation, and to which I was quite astonished. And we started a correspondence where I guess we both left real impressions on each other in that chance encounter back in I guess late '90s. And when he came back and started boodleAI, I got very interested. He reached out to me. I started to meet some of his team and some of the other nonprofits that were benefiting. He had contact with Sejal Desai that we were just all, as for the people who signed in early, you may have heard that, the co-chair of India Giving Day steering committee. So others of you may have had contact with him, but some of you may be new to his company and Shawn, but I think we're going to really be an eye-opening experience talking about the possibility of AI, not in general social impact, but in terms of making nonprofits in a day-to-day, month-to-month way function better, be easier, be more efficient, have more impact. Shawn, over to you.
Alex, thanks so much. And I did like that about a half dozen times you managed to work in how old I am. So I appreciate that. But no, pleasure to be here today. I'm going to just give a little touch on the background because the one thing Alex didn't touch on is kind of the nonprofit experience beyond writing checks. While I do that, one quick thing I want to ask, because it will help me kind of gauge where I go with the conversation. In the chat, could you all, while I'm talking, on a scale of 1 to 10, put a 1 to a 10 in on your experience to date with generative AI, with 1 being almost none, except I've heard of it before, to 10 being I use it on a daily basis. And I'll see those numbers scroll up. Alex gave most of my background. The one thing he didn't mention is I started literally as I came out of West Point onto my first nonprofit board. And for 30 years now, I have served on some sort of nonprofit board. It started focused on youth education. And for 3 decades, I've always been on some sort of youth education board. After my time in the military, served on several veteran service organization boards. I always kind of knew that the experience of a board member versus the frontline fundraiser or the people who run the organization is a lot different. I realized that in spades 8 years ago when we started Boodle. So we did start Boodle 8 years ago. Sejal, what you're going to see today is much different than what you and I met with in Texas, but it's the evolution of what we had done. But we did start, I jokingly tell people we started AI before AI became cool last year. What we did was very steeped in data science and machine learning, but we did realize that with the advent of generative AI, there was a very big opportunity, especially in the nonprofit community, which is where Boodle got its founding, was in building data science, machine learning, and AI for the nonprofit community. And that by leveraging AI, there was a much easier way to bring it into nonprofits. And the reason is, as Alex mentioned, I was a computer science major. So by default, every board I went on to, I was the tech committee for every nonprofit board I served on. And how has technology been brought into nonprofits up until a few years ago? It was brought in through a major enterprise license. It usually took months, if not quarters, to get that license approved. And in badly run organizations, the decision to make that purchase was done by the executive director and the board. The frontline people actually running the organization day to day often weren't even included. With generative AI, it's completely flipped. For free, and if you want to get more involved in it, for the cost of a couple of lattes a month, any individual can log in and start using this technology and start teaching the organization how they can use the technology. So now the technology comes from the bottom up rather than from the top down. All right, I saw a lot of numbers under 5. I saw a few above 5. As Alex said, this is not meant to be a grad school edition. I also don't expect you to walk out of here with a PhD in generative AI. There are 2 expectations I kind of set. One is I always hear from people, we just don't have the time. We're busy. And the analogy I like to give is talking to a farmer as he or she heads into harvest season, right? With a plow and a horse, and you have a John Deere tractor for them that you're willing to give them, right? They don't have time to sit down for a week and read the John Deere manual because they've got work they've got to do towards harvest. But if every night after the sun sets, they took 10, 15, 20 minutes and read the John Deere manual, by the end of the month, they would be able to use the tractor in amazing ways and save them a bunch of time. And so what we tell people is, don't try and learn generative AI all in one day or one weekend. Let it permeate into what you do. And the reality is, most people are not there yet. McKinsey published a report at the end of last year, said that 90% of people who work in North America have not adopted generative AI. They have used it. No doubt hundreds of millions of people have logged into ChatGPT. They created a haiku about their bowling team, and then they haven't done much since then. And so what we wanted to do was find a way to help people adopt it, collaborate with it, and then most importantly for organizations, keep their data secure. So with that, I'm going to share a few slides, but I find, and I'm going to project, but I learned through practical example. And so I like to just go through. Sorry? Okay. Very quickly, just so I don't forget, if you all need resources to learn, these are all free, so I'm not pitching you on anything. Boodlebox, which I'm going to show you and we're going to walk through, has a nonprofits focus. We also have a YouTube channel where we offer a variety of people who post how they're using it. So you can see how your peers use it, what they're doing, how they're collaborating with it. And then for absolutely free, we have a learning hub on our website where every week we do a Gen AI 101 training. And this is not a Boodlebox pitch. It literally is, how do organizations tend to use generative AI in the first 90 days? It's 20 minutes of instruction and then 20 minutes of Q&A. My favorite part of the feedback I get on the Q&A is people tell me they realize that their question was not a dumb question because they were sitting in the background not asking something because they thought it was dumb, and then they hear someone else ask it. And so we try and get all those questions answered, but those are resources. All right, generative AI. How do you empower teams with generative AI? I gave your background. If you're not connected with me, that QR code is to my LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to connect with me. I try to post about 3 times a week on things related to generative AI to keep people updated. And if there's anything I can do to be helpful beyond today, please let me know. Setting the stage a little bit on how we at Boodle think and how I've generally approached technology, I wanted to share a couple of quotes that kind of set the mindset. One came from Bill Gates, which is, the advance of technology is based on making things fit in, so you don't even really notice they're there. Before ChatGPT launched, I used to get asked to get speeches on AI, and I would typically start by asking people, how many people in the crowd have used AI in the past 10 days? And invariably, less than 5% of the hands would go up, right? And I would ask them then, as for the rest of you, the 95% who didn't raise your hands, are you telling me you didn't watch Netflix, you didn't watch Hulu, you didn't take a Lyft, you haven't used Google Maps? We don't realize that these technologies have permeated our lives. They're there, we're just not overtly having to use them. But we use that as a basis because a lot of people hear AI and they get scared and they don't even realize they're already using it. Albert Einstein, of course, the human spirit must prevail over technology. We have touted since our inception 8 years ago, the most powerful AI team is the human machine team, right? The machine is going to do things that would take the human weeks, months, sometimes years to do, and it will do it in minutes and hours. But at the same time, the human is able to add the human side to things that the machine just does not get. And so the two of them together bring a lot. This has been attributed to Charles Darwin. No one's actually found the quote, but it's been attributed, which is, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one that is most responsive to change. And this is very true. And in the nonprofit sector has often been kind of bemoaned as technology phobes, or the people who adopt technology the latest. Over the past 18 months, I've seen nonprofits adopt Gen AI faster than I have most commercial companies. So I think that is changing, and that's going to allow them to survive in a lot better way. And then finally, Steve Jobs, innovation is what distinguishes between leaders and followers. And I assume all of you are here today because you want to learn how to innovate and because you are leaders. Now, what is generative AI? I was actually talking on Tuesday in Washington, D.C. I spoke to about 25 nonprofit leaders who wanted to understand generative AI better. And I get so buried in this, I forget that people don't necessarily know how to distinguish generative AI from traditional AI. So artificial intelligence is a very big field, and generative AI is a subset of that. Traditional AI, which you may have heard of, and Sejal, what I had showed you before, our traditional platform, is very predictive, right? We would build a model on 1,000 donors, and then we would apply that model to a prospect list to find other donors who look like those thousands. We were predicting out of a group. Generative AI, these large language models like ChatGPT and Claude and Bard and all the others, have been trained on billions, in some cases, trillions of data points, right? And what they're doing is they're generating net new, right? They're not making a prediction, they're generating something net new. What we've done with Boodlebox, and the reason I'm going to talk about Boodlebox today and use it in the conversation, is we have brought all these platforms together. We give you the ability to use ChatGPT and Bard and Anthropic all in one place. And the reason is, as we talked to people, we saw organizations where people were using all of these, but they had 4 different Chrome windows open, and they were hopping between each one of them. That to me is the equivalent of hiring 4 geniuses, bringing them into your office, sitting them in the 4 corners, and then spending your day running between the rooms talking to them, right? We would never do that. We would bring them in the conference room with our team, and we would get amazing things accomplished. What are the big problems today with generative AI? And I'm sure you've seen these. Number one, new users are apprehensive. The number one reason people cite that they're apprehensive about using generative AI is because of a fear around prompt engineering. And I'll talk to you how we get around that. Users want to be able to experience control and bringing multiple AIs together that I just talked about. And then finally, organizations want to know that their proprietary data, their donor data, is now not being trained on by Microsoft or by Google or by someone else. Quick quote on, and this is a very common thing I hear about once a week, people being able to bring all the tools in one place. But what's really important with generative AI is the numbers on the bottom, and I'll run through them in a minute. But it's understanding that every month your organization's not using it, you're giving up productivity to any of your competition that is using it. So there's an adage that's been out there that AI is coming for my job. If you're a development director, I will contend that AI is not coming for your job. But another development director who is using AI is probably coming for your job. And so this was an organization, much larger organization, but they put a 16-person pilot on the platform using generative AI. What was great is 8 of these people had never logged into generative AI in their life. By the end of the month, all 16 were using generative AI on a weekly basis. They only used the platform for a total of 27 hours because they were new, but they documented 372 hours of productive work. So for them, that was the equivalent of a 16-person team adding 2 more people at really no extra cost. And as I said, I've been on boards for 30 years. I've never met an organization that wouldn't want to have 2 extra FTEs working for them at no extra cost. And so for them, that's the equivalent of adding $20,000 of productive work in a single month that they were able to do. I should have said this at the beginning, but don't be scared, but also don't be late. I mentioned before, 90% of the workforce has yet to really adopt it. So you're not behind, but this is a technology that is very easy to adopt and get up to speed. If you don't start paying attention to it, you can get behind very quickly. Number one, though, set expectations appropriately. I mentioned before, your life's not going to change on day 1 of using generative AI. The other thing is people hear AI and they think perfection. They think it's going to just work right out of the box. We tell people when you bring generative AI in, think of it like you just hired the number 1 graduate student in your field into your organization, right? On day 1, you get one of the smartest people you could possibly hire, but they don't know anything about your organization. They don't know that you don't like to use contractions in your writing, right? They don't know any of this stuff. But you're going to teach them, right? And on day 2, they're going to be better. And on day 3, they're going to be better. That's how you need to approach generative AI. It is not going to knock your socks off and produce a perfect grant proposal or blog post or social media post in the first time you ask it. But as you start to give it feedback and as it learns what you like, you're going to be amazed over the course of a month how good it gets. AI is not the answer, but it is definitely part of the solution. What I mean by that is Don't ever take what comes out of the AI and just cut and paste it. Again, the human machine team, we need to look at it the same way that graduate student, when they produce something, you wouldn't just take it and go publish it, right? You're going to read it, you're going to edit it, you're going to give them feedback, and then you're going to put the next draft out. And I talked about AI being a recent graduate. All right, so now what I want to walk through are what are the 12 ways that we see generative AI used? And these are, obviously, there's many more ways. What I tried to do was summarize the 12 ways we see it in the first 90 days. I'm going to give examples around fundraising for each one of these, but if anybody has questions as I go through this, please feel free to interrupt. Alex, I can't see, so if people raise hands or anything, if you could let me know, but please feel free to interrupt. If there are other questions you have about one of these topics and you want to ask if it could do something, I'd much rather you interrupt me than come back to it at the end. But either way, whatever works best. So number one is ideation. So when you're sitting down and you're looking at that blank screen and you're trying to figure out what's the theme I'm going to do for our fundraising day that we've got up? What is the theme we're going to do for our annual gala? Those type of things, instead of having to sit for an hour and come up with a bunch of ideas, you can punch in a quick sentence or two into what you're doing and boom, get 10 ideas. Now, are they going to be any of the ones you're going to use? No, but it just starts to get things going, right? It takes an hour out of your day and gets it done in about 60 seconds so that you can go on to that next phase that you need to go to of ideating further. Summation, taking lengthy reports. I know all of you focus your charities on India, and so I'm assuming a lot of the work you do is also written in non-English. So the ability, and you'll see the fourth one down there is translation. This is not like Google Translate, where it got like 1 out of every 10 words right. The translation capabilities of these LLMs is phenomenal. And so the ability to take a 50-page report and translate it into English, or summarize a 50-page report written in Hindi into 10 bullet points in English, or vice versa, going the other way around. Those are things that used to take days, if not weeks to do, and now you can get it done in minutes. That annual report, the 50-page annual report you send out every year that you know very few people actually read, being able to sit down, give it to the system and say, give me 10 bullet points I can put into an email, and boom, 60 seconds later, you have the highlights out of that report that you can now put into an email. Revisions is a very common one. I use revisions on a daily basis. Everything from LinkedIn post I'm about to put up there for ideas on how I could write it better, things I could do to be more captivating, to if I've got an important email and I know I'm not in the best of moods, like the person has made me angry, but I do not want it to come across as angry, literally telling the machine, I am angry. I think this has a bad tone. Make this email into a positive tone. And boom, 60 seconds later, you have a positive toned email that sounds professional and is ready to go out. Translation I talked about, phenomenal on research. And one of the research dating back beyond a year, these models are trained up to a certain point. Even ChatGPT 4.0, which is the most recent launch, is only trained up to October of 2023. So if you want information before that, these models are great. If you're looking for more timely, though, one of the other models we put in Boodlebox is called Perplexity. Perplexity is actually trained on the web. And so you're able to access the internet more real time and actually get your sources. And so what did we used to do? I talked about how we as knowledge workers don't have the muscle memory to use this technology. What is our muscle memory when we need to research? If you needed to go find out about generative AI, what would you have done in the past? You would have gone to Google. What is generative AI? You would have gotten 10 links. You would have gone and read those 10 links, and then you would have come up with a summary and then pass that on to your boss to tell them what generative AI is. Perplexity, when you do that, does that for you all in 60 seconds. It goes and grabs the 10 links. It goes and reads them all. It summarizes them and puts them in there. If you need more information, it provides the sources so you can go look at it. But that hour of work you used to do on research can now be done in about 60 seconds. Recommendations are phenomenal. I don't know how the boards you sit on, but over the years, I have sat on boards where a polite way to say it is there are personalities on the boards. And there are people who, because of their personality, they could deliver the cure for cancer. And there will be other people on the board who will not listen to it because it came from that person. And one of the things I found very powerful is now I let the AI do it, right? If we're discussing something, and I did this recently where organization was trying to decide whether it was going to keep its gala or not. And so I had the AI, I gave a bunch of information about the organization, how we've done on our previous galas, everything else. And then I had it run the pros and cons. And when I went to the next board meeting, instead of anything coming from any individual, it came from AI. And now everybody was able to discuss it because it wasn't tied to an individual. Evaluation and analysis. Number one on the fundraising side, great to be able to put in the stats from your most recent campaigns and have the AI be able to do an evaluation of it for you or an analysis of it for you. If you've got really good data on your donors, being able to upload your CRM and then have it talk about and do high-level analysis of your donors and who they are. Variety of different ways that the evaluation and analysis can be used from a fundraising perspective. Sentiment analysis is a wonderful one. Being able to understand the sentiment of what you've written. We as humans, we have bias. It's in our nature. There's nothing we can do about it. We can put out a really good product, but to have an unbiased sentiment analysis so you understand what your audience is going to perceive becomes extremely powerful. Problem solving, variety of different ways to use this. If you're fundraisers, I know you deal in Excel a lot. Let's say you need to create a pivot table. Being able to, you can't quite remember how you did a pivot table last time. Being able to ask it how to build a pivot table and get step-by-step instructions on how to do that. Other problems that you may run into, or just trying to, hey, we're trying to put together this gala. We've got this timeline that we have to work with, but we have to get these things done. What would be the best way to put an agenda together? And boom, it puts out in 60 seconds, a proposed agenda. Again, it's not going to be your final one, but saves you some time and gives you something to start working with. Content generation is by far the most common way that this gets used. An interesting way I have seen a fundraiser use this recently. She has got about, they've got over 10,000 donors, but she had about 1,000 that she considers her top donors, right? Not major gift donors always, but just her top. And that top can be major gift. It could be people who have given 5 times. It could be people who have introduced other donors. She's grouped them, but she's got this 1,000. And she wanted to be able to steward them along. And they've got really good information in their database. They've got notes on each person, their likes, their dislikes, things like that. She set up the system so that every morning when she walks in, it has produced 5 emails personalized to 5 donors, along with a picture that is personalized to that person based on information about them. And so now when she walks in the morning at 9 o'clock, she takes about 10 minutes. She reads these emails because if Elizabeth Jones is in the database as Elizabeth Jones, but everybody knows she goes by Liz, she's able to go change that real quick, right? The human machine team coming together, but has this wonderful email that's not asking for any money, has some updates on the organization, but it's personalized. It talks about the kids. It talks about her husband's sailing adventures, whatever it may be, but it's personalized to her. And now every day she's putting out 5 emails with 10 minutes invested, 25 emails a week, 100 emails a month. And before she gets to Christmas, she's touched all 1,000 donors personally. Again, 30 years of working with organizations, I have never met a development director who's put 1,000 personalized emails out over the course of a year. Learning assistance kind of gets tied to research, but it's also if you know what you need to get done, but you just don't know the steps to get through it. Very good at walking you through it. And this is one I'm going to deviate just a little bit out of work is this technology is not just to be kept at work. You can use this in your personal lives. So I use this to help tutor my daughter, learning assistance, right? She's learning something called Singapore math, which I did not grow up with. I know how to solve fraction problems. I don't know how to do it using Singapore math. It does a brilliant job of not only walking step by step and not giving her the answer, on how to solve a fractions problem using Singapore math. But it also does it because I gave it the instructions at the level of a 10-year-old girl in fourth grade, right? Because I'm going to convey, no matter, even if I understood Singapore math, I'm going to convey it in a different way. It does it to her level, which is wonderful. And then finally, QA and role playing. This is one of my favorites because for 30 years now in building companies, my favorite part of being an entrepreneur is when my clients teach me how to use my platform. They come up with ideas we hadn't thought about. So we had created, and you'll see it if you ever use our platform, a bot called the Devil's Advocate bot. The idea being, if you wanted to debate something or discuss something, instead of having to talk a colleague's ear off or get into an argument with your spouse, you could feed it into the Devil's Advocate bot and it would go back and forth with you. She realized that we allow you to upload information. She could use that Devil's Advocate bot. And over 60 days, she took 12 potential major gift donors that she was going to talk to. She scraped their LinkedIn profiles. She took all of their board bios that they had on the web, all their publicly available information, and she fed it into the Devil's Advocate bot. And then she fed in information about her university and her pitch deck. And then she asked the Devil's Advocate bot to take on the role of that donor. She said in all over the 12 meetings, the practice meetings she did, in 2 cases, it asked her questions she's never been asked in 8 years of major gift fundraising. And she said both those questions came up with those donors. So an amazing way to be able to prepare ahead of time. So none of us are going to walk in flat-footed to a meeting, but to be able to walk in with an even higher edge as you get into that meeting is going to help obviously guarantee success a little bit more. So I'm going to pause there. Those are the 12 ways, as I said, we see organizations typically use generative AI in the first 90 days. Any questions on any of those, or any I didn't discuss that people thought might have been discussed?
Shawn, we were going to have Meenakshi kick off the discussion period with a question, but do you have more to present, or?
No, we can go into Q&A if you want.
So really good. And let me just give it over to Meenakshi, and who can start this off. And I'm sure a lot of people will have experiences to share and questions to ask. Meenakshi.
Thanks, Alex. Shawn, that was really, really enlightening. I think my AI score has gone up by 2 points at least from that. So thank you. One of the questions I have as a nonprofit person is that if we were to incorporate AI into our nonprofits, how can we do it responsibly? Meaning, how do we do it ethically and generally deploy it within the organization? Do you have any suggestions for that?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you 3 answers. So the first is a bit of a pitch for another nonprofit. If you all get the opportunity, there's a nonprofit called fundraising.ai. They have a website. We started last year, but it is a group of both commercial and nonprofit entities. Commercial entities that work with nonprofits and the nonprofits trying to do just that, trying to understand how do we approach AI in a responsible and ethical manner. Now, that being said, we know that generative AI has already, in some of its foundations, started out unethically or in the wrong way. I live next door to a very renowned author of what my wife affectionately calls trashy romance novels. But this woman has published over 100 novels, does very well for herself, and found out early on in the very early versions of ChatGPT, they don't do this anymore, but in their very early versions, that her books had been trained on, and her contracts did not allow for that in any way whatsoever. And people recognize right away, hey, that's not the right thing. This is not how we're going to continue forward. We can't do this. And so organizations like Fundraising AI are focused on that and fundraising. Other organizations are trying to set up, what are the guardrails we need to have in place? There's a really good book written by Dr. Max Tegmark. He's a professor up in Boston called Life 3.0. And in his book, I'm paraphrasing, but he says in the book, we invented fire, we really messed it up. And then we invented fire extinguishers, fire alarms, fire trucks. And that's my view right now, is that we need to be looking. No one wants to get rid of fire, right? No one is, fires burn buildings down every year. They burn forests down every year. They cause deaths. But no one's out advocating we need to get rid of fire, right? But what we are advocating is, how do we mitigate the damage that it causes? I really don't think anybody wants to get rid of AI and generative AI when they see its power. But what we do want to do is we want to mitigate the damage it's going to cause. And so how do we engage it ethically and responsibly? How do we put the guardrails in place? How do we build those fire alarms, fire extinguishers, and fire exits so that people don't get hurt by AI, but are able to capitalize on it and really allow it to improve their missions in nonprofits, improve their lives when they're tutoring their daughters, whatever it may be, but be able to do those things.
Thank you. That was very helpful. And I'm going to open it up for questions from the audience. Janine, I know you have a question here. Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I was just wondering, for the fundraising personalized emails that you were talking about, when the AI is grabbing organizational updates, that would have to be publicly available somewhere, like on a blog, on our website, on social media. And if it's not, like, is there a way to enter that into the AI privately, about like stats and impacts that are not listed somewhere?
Yep. And this is where you need to be very careful. If you use ChatGPT directly or Claude directly or any of those, and I keep an account because I want to monitor what they're being able to do. But I'm very careful what I load in there on my personal account, because their terms of service, and it's not even small 2-point font, it is normal font. Their terms of service tells you any data you put into us, we're training on. We're going to use this data. It belongs to us at this point. What we did with our system was we built a vector database, which allows you to put in as much information as you want. Our terms of service, we modeled after CRMs and Dropbox, right? Two organizations that want you to put your data in, but they want you to know they're not using it, right? And so because we're not building models like these other organizations, we don't need to train on your data. We don't need to sell your data, use your data, commingle your data, or anything like that. And so we put everything that you load in about your organization into a vector database. We use a technology called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, to be able to get out of it what we need, and then be able to leverage the power of generative AI to deliver the answer that you need. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Do we have we have another question from Dr. Mahesh Srinivas. Please go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, thanks, Shawn. My question was simple also. Which generative AI platform would you recommend? I think there are at least half a dozen and probably many more coming up.
Yep.
For all these tasks that you referred to, where do you think we should begin?
So my bias is towards Boodlebox. Boodle, I think is great. But the reason is Boodlebox brings all the ones you've heard of together, right? In one place, you can use Perplexity, you can use ChatGPT, you can use Gemini, you can use the variety of other ones that are out there. You can use DALL-E, you can use Stable Diffusion to create images if you want. And so that ability, and you can actually have them talk to each other. So there are many days where if I've drafted something and I want input, I will have, within Boodlebox, I will have ChatGPT take a review of it. I'll take whatever it gives me as feedback, I'll make edits, and then in the same conversation, I'll have Claude do a revision of it. And then if it's really important, I may even have Llama do a revision of it. And so it's that ability to have them talk to each other and collaborate that we feel is really powerful. What I will say, the other reason we did it is, as we talk to teams, very typically certain types of professionals prefer certain types of models. So what we have found is marketers who tend to be more creative and they need more creative things find that Claude is more powerful for them, and they don't like using ChatGPT or Gemini. At the same time, programmers and developers find that Gemini and other platforms tend to be a little bit more powerful. And then there are other people in sales jobs that really prefer ChatGPT and what it can do. And so within a team, I've never really found an entire team that has marketing and finance and a variety of different people who all want to use one model. They tend to want to use different ones. And that was why we created Boodlebox, to allow you to put all of those into one place and be able to use them all at once.
Thank you.
And I'm
Mukta,
just
please
in
go
case,
ahead with your question.
I'm just going to
Yeah.
throw the QR code will get you to me if you missed it before. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so yeah, my question was similar to Janine's and Dr. Mahesh's. Basically, so what you're saying is if we use this platform, Boodlebox, whatever we put in could also be confidential data and the data integrity will be maintained.
Correct. That is the way we've set it up.
Any confidential reports that you want to, because obviously there's a lot of donor sensitive data, organization sensitive data.
Yep.
And we can, like, without any fear, upload them there and use it for in either of the functions that you mentioned.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, we've been around for 8 years and dealing with customer data for 8 years. And we know how important it is that that not be shared, that not be put out into the public domain in any way. And they also don't want organizations training on it, right? Like, in the nonprofit space, there are collaboratives where you can put your data in, and in return, what you get is prospects. But your data, your donors are going into that collaborative or cooperative, excuse me, and they can now be gone after. That's the price you pay. And we never set up that way from the very beginning. We knew that the majority of nonprofits don't want that. They want to protect their donors. They want to protect their proprietary information. And so as we evolved into Boodlebox, we had to have a way to be able to do the same thing. And that's what we've done.
Okay, thank you. That's great to know because, I've been tempted to use some of these platforms like a lot, but then they come with a price, these open platforms. So have never used them. It's good to know that there's something like Boodlebox. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
We have a question from Nirav now.
Yeah. Hi, Shawn. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Shawn, it's actually a follow-up to what you just said right now, that Boodlebox keeps personal information personal. Now, my question is, if you're using all of these different platforms, so how can you ask them the questions while keeping the question personal?
I'm going to answer it in 2 parts. Well, 3 parts, actually. So the first part of what we do is, as I mentioned, everything you put in, we put into a vector database, right? So everything sits on our servers. It's protected by us. It's not going anyplace until you put a prompt in. And when you put a prompt in, we then use, RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, to go through all the data you've uploaded to figure out what needs to go into a prompt, an optimized prompt to put into the large language model. Then what we've done is, and this is where it gets 2 steps. First thing is, right now we have corporate APIs with all of the large language models. And what we negotiated in our corporate API is, unlike the one I have personally, where they can train on my data when I use my personal account, our corporate APIs forbid them from using our data in any way. So they are not allowed to use anything that we send to them. So through us, you're able to take advantage of that corporate API. What we're investigating with AWS, because everything we do, all our servers are kept through AWS. AWS is setting up something called Bedrock. And in Bedrock, it's going to allow us to actually run our own instances of these models, everything except for ChatGPT. And so my hope is, by the end of the summer, we won't even be trusting on a terms of service and an API. We'll just be running our own instances of these models. It should also make it faster, but it'll then be 100% run on our platform through our vector database and not going anyplace.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shawn.
Absolutely.
And we have a couple of minutes for a few more questions.
So, Shawn, I had a question. I was checking out your platform, and I saw the rates are quite reasonable. At the same time, is there, apart from the free model that you have, is there anything else that you can allow the like either the IPA members or us to try something a little more deep dive? Do you have something like that we could try, or do we have to just try the free and go? Yeah.
No, absolutely. And to be completely transparent, that we're changing feedback we've gotten on our current pricing model is it can be a little confusing for the different tiers. And so I think it's the first week of July, we're going to switch to just free and one pricing model of $19.99. Doesn't matter the number of words. That's just going to be it. Make it real easy. What I did tell Alex, for you all being members, one of the things I'm willing to do, if you want to sign up before the end of the month and try it out, you can email me, connect with me, get my contact information from Alex, and I will provide you a code to give you a 50% discount for your first month. And that way allow you to get in for probably the cost of a latte and try it for an entire month. And one of the things we do for teams, and this tends to be very powerful, is every team of 10 or more that uses the platform, we will produce a report like this. And it's what I showed you in that slide earlier, with number of people using the platform, how many of them are weekly active users, how much time they spent on it, but how much they produced, right? And so if all of a sudden, like, as I mentioned, this team of 16, for them, their monthly license was $300, but they're producing $20,000 in productive work, it becomes a pretty easy math problem to determine that this is a good investment. But to answer your original question, happy to provide a 50% discount for the first month for anybody who wants to try it out, just to make it that much easier, so they're not limited by the freemium usage. And that's all because of Alex, and that he didn't call me old 12 times, only 6 times.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shawn. That was very, very informative. And I want to now move on to closing comments and invite Nirav Shah from Planet Read to give us closing comments. A short intro to Nirav. He has studied and grown up at Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry in India. He did his MBA in International Business from Pondicherry University, and he speaks 7 languages and has a passion for IT and its use in education and literacy development. For over 20 years, Nirav has been working in the field of literacy and primary education in India. He's currently leading the operation and technology of Planet Read in India, right from its inception in 2004. Nirav, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Meenakshi. Shawn, thank you for that short but very informative session on Gen AI. I think you made it simple enough for even the non-technical people to get it. I just wanted to say that the way you basically said these 12 ways in which nonprofits could use it, I think is a very, I think if nonprofits just went through that list and saw which are the ones that I can start working with today, would be a very good way to start using tools. I personally looked through the list and I saw I use 5 of them quite extensively: ideation, summation, revision, research, and content generation. I have found some very good tools for creating PPTs. So I think that's something which I don't know whether Boodlebox helps with that, but I think not-for-profits have to keep making presentations, and anything that can help with Excel and PPT is something I find very powerful. And I've used other tools to help me with that. And maybe you could tell us, Shawn, if there is something that Boodlebox can help with. But otherwise, I have used, there are a lot of tools which help with creating PPTs. So they help you, like, you put the ideas in there and then you tell, I want it in 5 slides or 8 slides or 10 slides, and it helps you do that. It even helps you get images for that. And I find that saves a lot of time, And because often enough, you want to get something out there quickly, and you just give it the like the report that you have that you want to convert into PPT, and Gen AI is very good at doing that. So maybe Shawn, that's a question which I would want to pose to you. Does Boodlebox help with that also? Yeah.
I have used it for our slides to investors because we're raising money from venture capital right now. I've seen nonprofits do it as they're using it for fundraising or presentations to their boards. It doesn't produce yet, right now in its current form, it doesn't produce the graphics and everything else. It's all the substance. So it'll produce the outline, the bullet points, and all of that. You're still going to have to make it pretty. Now, there are platforms out there that will produce the graphical outlay as well. And our plan over the course of the year is to incorporate those into our platform. But right now, for me, the hardest part is the substance, and it does a really good job of that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I think that's great. I think a few key takeaways, apart from the 12 ways that you shared, was I think that personal insight about those 5 emails and which are personalized. I think that's a fabulous way. I would have never thought of that, 5 personalized mails a day. And I think that's going to be very useful for other nonprofits which are here, because often that's one thing we struggle with, how to give personalized messages without sounding fake. And I think if AI can help with that, so it creates the first draft and then you review it and then personalize it further. I think that's a fabulous idea, a definite takeaway for me. I think even using the devil's advocate box for prepping for a meeting, I think that's a fabulous way. I have been using Gen AI for so long, but I've never thought of using it in that way. Like, I think that's something which would again be very powerful for any meeting. So I would definitely use that, try and put in the LinkedIn profile, etc. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I think the biggest point that you addressed is a lot of nonprofits are very afraid to use our data with OpenAI or any of those platforms because of the privacy angle. And you saying that your platform actually handles that very carefully in a dedicated manner, I think puts a lot of trust there. And what I would take away from this is like start using more of Gen AI, definitely. And if you are concerned about privacy, give Boodlebox a chance to look at that. So and so thank you for the presentation, extremely informative and some very good ideas that we could get started off with.
Thank you so much. And before we go, I want to just share with everyone that about a group that IPA has launched recently. We call it the Technology and Development Group. And Nirav and some of the other IPA organizations are participating in it. And what we are hoping to do with this group is that really look at the problems that we as organizations might be collectively sharing, and use and brainstorm around these, learn from our peers, and help to come to solutions earlier. So if any of you are interested in joining the group, we have our next meeting coming up on June 27th. And please, I'm going to put my email in the chat. You can reach out to me and I can add you to that, our next meeting. And thank you so much to Shawn and Nirav for your closing comments.
Thank you for having me, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.